Okay, hi again, everybody, and welcome to Around the Town with Chuck. I'm Chuck Guglielmo, and my special guest today, all the way from the Lake County News Herald, is the very fine sports writer John Kampf. John, how are you tonight?
Real good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, and we're going to be here. We're going to talk a little bit about this new conference.
Okay.
The Conneaut Spartans are going to go in, and then we're going to talk some general sports as well, locally and maybe even on the professional scene.
Sounds good.
John, let's start with yourself, first of all. You are a Grand Valley Mustang.
Yes, 1987.
1987, and then from there you decided you wanted to be a sports writer, or did you know that when you were in high school?
Actually, I didn't know that. At first I thought I was going to go into dairy science and research. I grew up on my family's farm, milking cows and baling hay, and I went to Ohio State in that, and I found out that I wasn't real good with the maths and sciences. However, on the other side, so I was following Dad for a while, but my mom is an English teacher, French teacher from Grand Valley, so I followed that path, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed my mom had us keep journals growing up, so I was always good at writing and stuff, and I enjoyed sports, so I thought, well, what better way to really enjoy the rest of my career writing about sports.
Exactly.
So I was transferred to the School of Journalism at Ohio State and started covering sports at Ohio State, and I've been doing it ever since.
And you covered sports for the Star Beacon, and when did you transition over to the News Herald?
Oh, I started at the Jefferson Gazette right out of college.
Okay.
I did my first summer internship there covering the Ashtabula County Fair, which was really easy for me because I grew up in the 4-H scene at the Ashtabula County Fair, so that was a pretty good gig. And then I was at the Jefferson Gazette until 1996, 97, and then I went to the Star Beacon into 2001, and I've been at the News Herald now since January 31st, 2002.
No, you do a very good job.
Thanks, I appreciate it. It's fun life, I appreciate it.
We're going to talk about the Conneaut Spartans going into the District 10 Pennsylvania Conference. Conneaut Spartans, of course, as you know, have been out of the conference for the last 7 seasons when the Northeastern Conference folded.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. Should it be all cheers or should there be some jeers to this?
I think it would probably be 90% cheers because I think this is the best fit for Conneaut, what they needed to do. And the only jeers that you could come up with is it's unfortunate that something couldn't have been done a number of years ago that maybe could have made this a more inclusive conference where what was originally what was recently the Premier Athletic Conference, get Madison, Riverside, getting some of those smaller schools in there and make it more of a tiered league that you see now with what the Grand Valley Conference has. That was a possibility at one time, and then when everybody just went their separate ways, that's what left us where we are right now. And Conneaut had to do what was best for them, just like Jefferson had to, Edgewood had to, Geneva had to. It's unfortunate, but I'd never thought that a county conference by itself would have fit just because there's too many tiers of enrollments.
Of course, the Spartans were denied the Northeastern Athletic Conference. That's where PV and Grand Valley, and those
yes.
teams are at.
Yes.
And they were denied the American Conference as well, the All-American Conference. Any ideas as to why? Now, I've heard travel was one of them. I heard some facilities were an issue as well, and I heard the sports teams weren't all that good.
But maybe a combination of all, but I think the biggest one was just the travel part of it. I know that the CVC's tires have been kicked at one point as well, and there was some talk about other Ashtabula County schools getting into the Chagrin Valley Conference. And it just comes down to a distance thing, and I think that came into play with the Northeastern Athletic Conference and also with pretty much every conference. But when you look at what they've got right now with what's going on over in Pennsylvania, it's a really easy commute for a lot of these schools, and I think it'll work out just fine. It's unfortunate some of those other ones didn't, but once you have schools that are established, those NAC schools, the CVC schools, it's tough for them to get out of that comfort zone because they're not going to throw someone a lifeline if it's going to jeopardize what they already have there. So I understand that a little bit. It's just unfortunate for Conneaut because it's a really great town and a historical type of sports teams they have here.
Sure. When you look at that football schedule for Conneaut, talking about rivalries that they're going to lose, like Edgewood's not going to be on the football schedule. At least the athletic administrator at Conneaut told me, at least not for the first 2 years. But as you look at the Girard and Fairview, those are nearby cities that could develop into rivalries, don't you think?
I really agree with you a lot of those. Yeah, just because a state line dissects these towns a little bit, it doesn't mean that these kids don't know each other. A lot of these play baseball together, play summer basketball together. They know each other. Just because the state line divides them, I think that those are two very good possibilities for rivalries. I think that there's also a little rivalry that you started maybe with Grand Valley. You've been playing them for a couple of years and some other sports. And rich traditions with Champion and LaBrade. I think over time, if you keep those on the schedule, it would be great to get Edgewood back on the schedule, but I understand that sometimes you have to step away from a rivalry. Grand Valley and Pymatuning Valley did that at one point. When they went to different conferences, they actually didn't play each other for a couple of years, and that was unthought of at the time. But now, you're eventually your paths are going to find each other again, and I believe they will.
You're exactly right. I had Steve French in here a few weeks ago, and he was saying Jefferson didn't even play Pymatuning Valley, which is his alma mater, didn't even play them this year, which was kind of interesting.
It's hard to think that some of these schools, that some of the local rivalries are being lost because you're so used to seeing the old Northeastern Conference. In Ashtabula, you had the City Series where Ashtabula, Harbor, St. John, and Edgewood always played each other. Well, now we've got consolidation. We've got, St. John so small that they don't play the bigger schools. That's a sign of the times. It's going to happen like that. But I really hope that some of these schools can find their ways to meet each other again on the non-conference schedule because they're too good of things to just let walk away for good.
Do you think losing the rivalries hurts attendance?
I think it does, and I think it hurts. You looked at what the other night Jefferson played Edgewood, and I'm not sure there was a seat to be had in Jefferson's gymnasium. It was packed. The very next night, Jefferson played Struthers, and the 50-50 might have been, you could have bought a Clark bar. It was just really not a very impressive, but that's a function of two things. First of all, Jefferson and Edgewood are right next to each other, long drive for Struthers, and plus you've got a real emotional game one night, and the next game it's kind of that emotional hangover that, we just beat Edgewood, who wants to go watch the Struthers game. So yeah, I think that it does affect it, but I think it's a little bit more than just distance, and but I think that you can get that back. I just hope that it has the same clout when it's a non-conference game.
Mm-hmm. John Kampf of the Lake County News Herald is my guest on Around the Town with Chuck. John, maybe you can help us out here. Now, that's the teams that Conneaut will play in the football conference. For the other sports, are there going to be different conferences? Is this going to be the same teams for all the sports? Do you know anything on that?
With all intents and purposes, this is going to be the core. You're going to have some other crossovers. Like I know that, Slippery Rock, the one that stuck out in my mind because Conneaut softball is so established, and that might be the highest sport that Conneaut's got going right now is that softball schedule. They do go a little bit further south. They do go down and play Slippery Rock, which is a little bit further of a drive. A lot of it is just going to depend, the way it looks like to me, it's going to depend on the strength of a schedule. You might play a little bit tougher of a schedule if your program's a little bit more established. And I like that. A lot of schools, a lot of leagues are doing that now, is you might have more of a weighted schedule if you're more stronger in a certain sport. And that's certainly where softball falls in for Conneaut.
Mm-hmm. John, I got some people have sent me some questions.
Sure.
Or comments. I don't know if they're all questions or comments. And you just tell me what you think. I won't say who sent them or not. It says,
fine.
So Conneaut, a school in Ohio, will play in a conference in Pennsylvania with rules governed by the PIAA. Well, I say boo to the OHSAA. You blew this situation and should be ashamed. Can you comment on that?
Insinuating that Conneaut blew the situation.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that they had to do what they had to do. You've got to do what's best for your kids, and it's really hard to entertain a independent schedule. It's hard to find teams in weeks 7, 8, 9, 10, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 because everybody's playing conference games then. They had to do what's best. My hat's off to the Conneaut administration for thinking outside the box and doing this. It's not going to affect them in any way, the playoffs here in Ohio.
Right.
The way that the playoffs work here in Ohio, I talked with Tim Street from the OHSAA about this. Computer points aren't going to be affected at all. What they're going to do is they're going to look at the enrollment numbers of, say for instance, Oil City right off the bat. They're going to look at what their attendance or what their enrollment is, and they're going to slot that into what division they would be if they were in Ohio, and that's just your first level points there. Second level points can change a little bit, but when you look at it, it's not going to change that much because Steubenville, 3 of their 9 games this year, that's a third of their schedule, were out of state schools, and they went into the state championship game. St. Ed's, 6 of their 10 opponents were from out of Ohio, and they won a state championship. Just because you play out of state people, it doesn't mean it's going to hurt your computer points at all. Your divisor might be a little bit different, a little bit lower, but it's not going to change at all. Conneaut's still going to have the exact same opportunity to make it just by playing different teams.
This is why I got John Kampf here. We're going to get all our answers here. All right. This one, governing and rules part makes no difference. Non-conference games are played across state lines all the time without any issue. I call it a victory.
Couldn't agree with him more. I don't know who the guy is, but I'd give him a high five if he was sitting here with us right now. That's the way it is. You have to go where people want to play you and you think that you've got the best opportunity to play. And this is what Conneaut did. They could have sat here all day long and kicked their feet and crossed their arms and said, no one wants us in our conference. We're just not going to take our ball and go home. They didn't do that. They went out and they said, okay, this is the best thing for our kids.
Yeah.
And I applaud them for that. It's much better to get into this situation where you're going right across the state line and playing Oil City, Mercyhurst Prep, Titusville, Corey, and not driving to Columbus or Cincinnati. Oh, we're in Ohio. Well, yeah, but at what cost? You're driving 4 or 5 hours for a game. Well, here you're going to drive half an hour for a game. This is a much better situation.
So do they play in Pennsylvania state playoffs tournaments? Of course, I think we know the answer
Yes,
to that.
yeah, no, they will still be in Ohio state playoffs in all sports. So yeah, they don't have to worry about that.
All right, don't get me wrong. I'm happy to see my alma mater in a conference again, but it's a shame the OHSAA didn't step in and make this right. The rankings for tournament play or playoffs can't be based on anything other than guesswork and assumptions. With that said, happy the kids will have league titles to play for again.
The OHSCA is real good about not stepping into territories that they don't think that they should step into. I've seen it before where coaches have gotten into recruiting issues. They will deal with the recruiting issues, but as far as any sort of ramifications does not violate their bylaws, they're not going to step in on that. I understand what this gentleman might be, wishing the OHSA had more clout than that, but there's certain things that they're going to say, okay, this is what we can control. We're not going to get into a realm or to an arena that's really none of our business to get into. I'm sure they feel bad that Conneaut might have to not be in an Ohio conference. There's a lot of the commissioners down there. Dan Ross is actually very well versed with the Northeastern Ohio, and we were talking a little bit about it last time I chatted with him. And he understands that it's tough to find mixes and matches, but he brought up Western Ohio with the Western Buckeye League, and that goes all the way down from Wapakoneta clear up to Defiance, and that's a lot longer than what we've got out here. So
right.
Everybody's fighting the same battles.
Now, with the Spartans, when they play home games, I know in football they're going to be refereed, and the rules will be by Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Against Pennsylvania schools. Do you know if that's going to be the case in the other sports as well? I would assume so.
I would assume so, yes. When you look at like Jefferson, when they play in this All-American Conference, they have to hire All-American Conference officials. Whoever the assigner is for that conference is who assigns the officials.
Whether they're playing a county team or
Whether
not.
it's yeah.
I see.
Yeah, so because they are part of that conference, they adhere to those rules. Since they are part of that organization, the District 10 over there, and I understand that. The rules aren't different. It's not like they're playing 7-on-7 football over there and playing on 11-on-11 over here. It's really not that different, so I don't think it's going to be a big deal.
Okay. This one, it says, honestly, shame on the surrounding districts that chose the self-preservation above all else. PATH then offered absolutely zero assistance to the one school left in the dust for the past 7 years.
That's tough. That's a really tough one because you always want to do what's best for everybody, but at some point you have to look out for number one. And when Lakeside formed, they became so much bigger than everybody else. Now really, they're not that much bigger right now. Their enrollment is coming down. So they had to do what was best for them. Jefferson had to do what was best for them. Geneva, I think everybody's in a pretty good fit right now. I think Grand Valley PV in the Northeast Athletic Conference is a pretty good fit for them. Jefferson, you look at what they're doing athletically right now.
Competing extremely well.
On a very high level.
In multiple sports.
Yes, and it's tough. And Edgewood's going through a little bit of a transitional phase because it's their first year in that. You give them a little bit of time when they're seeing that competition week in and week out, game in and game out, you're going to see their level start to come up a little bit. Geneva, they took some real lumps in that Premier Athletic Conference, but now they're over in the CVC, and you're seeing that they're pretty competent with all those other schools, with Chagrin Falls, with Perry, with Orange, because they were tested so mightily by Riverside and North and South.
Tougher competition.
Yeah, so I think you're going to see it with Conneaut too. Conneaut hasn't played the toughest of schedules because it's tough to really find the premier because they're all in leagues. But I think now that they're going to be over in this league right now,
Yeah,
over in
this will be a
Pennsylvania,
little tougher football schedule.
that's going to be very tough on them, yeah. And I think you're going to really see it pick up. And you know what, small segue, I've never met Rocco Dobrit, and I hope I do sometime soon because everybody I talk to speaks so highly of him, and I love what he's done. The thing that impresses me the most about who you've got over here coaches right now, Tim Tallbuck, I've known him since we were in high school at the same time. You know, Rocco, they're not using this as a stepping stone. They are in here and they're building something, and I appreciate that. I've not met Rocco, and I hope I do soon because he's doing a great job with this program.
He is a super guy, and I'm not being a homer or anything, but I love him to death, and he has really turned this football program around, and he's excited about the stiffer competition too when I talk with him.
As he should be. You look at this,
Yeah.
he's got a new league, which is great, and he's bookending it with playoff teams. That's a pretty good schedule. You know,
Yeah.
LeBray went to the playoffs, Grand Valley went to the playoffs. I saw Mercyhurst Prep this year. You know, they played up at Lake Catholic. So, you know, this is a good program, good team. Oil City, their head coach is Tiger Laverty's brother. Phillips coaching out there. Oh, sorry, that's I forget his name now. Sorry. Tiger Laverty's brother, the head coach at Kirtland, who's won the state championships, his brother's at Oil City. This is a really good schedule, and I think that it's going to really bring the level of play up for the Conneaut football program.
I'm excited about it. I mean, at first I had some mixed reactions, you know, not playing Edgewood. I mean, a really big rivalry, but maybe they'll come back in a couple years like
Sure.
the athletic administrator said. Okay, how about this one? So how will they compute playoff positions? Are they still points based?
Yes, they are. Like I said before, they're going to take, say for instance that Girard, Pennsylvania is the same size as Girard, Ohio. I'm not sure if they are or not, but I think they're a Division 5 school, Girard is. So what they're going to take their enrollment over there, their enrollment figure at Girard, Pennsylvania, and they're going to look at Ohio's chart and say, okay, if this team was in Ohio, they would be a Division 5 team. So that's where your first level points come, right from that. Now, depending on what the other teams are, if they have less games, the divisor would be less for the second level points. It's really not going to change anything. The one difference that you're going to see, like Steubenville this year, they had 3 out of Ohio schools, and they only played 9 games. So by playing 9 games, your divisor goes from 100 down to 90. So that way you're not penalized for not playing the 10th game. You're still going by the same divisor by the number of games you play. But a couple of the schools played less games, so their second level points dropped down to their divisor dropped down to 87. You still have the same number of points, but now your divisor is 87 instead of 100, so you're getting the same average as you would have if you had a full schedule. It's not going to change anything. I don't know what the second level points are going to shake out, but the first level points will be taken care of based on what the enrollment is over there plugged into the Ohio formula.
Sure. A couple other things before I get back to this that I'm thinking about as we're talking. You had mentioned Lakeside. When the Panthers and the Mariners consolidated, do you think that was the beginning of maybe the NEC fading out?
I think so. I think that a lot of schools in the NEC at one point were like, wow, they're going to be so much bigger than everybody else, and they really weren't. You took, I think at the time it was Division 3 Ashtabula and Division 4 Harbor. That doesn't just make them automatically a huge school. They were, the first year they were Division 1. I remember they played Mentor in the playoffs, but they were just over by a couple boys. But you look at what enrollment is around here, a lot of these schools, I don't think anybody in Ashtabula County is on their way up enrollment-wise. So I think that you took a decent Ashtabula program and a decent Harbor program that I think a lot of people thought that was going to translate into a mega power in Ohio. It doesn't work like that. Just because you're adding 2 decent schools doesn't automatically mean you're going to turn into a powerhouse. But yeah, I thought that, and I think the Madison, Riverside were ready to move that way as well.
All right, how about this one, John? It says, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this, but the state converts out-of-state opponents to fit OSHA's point system. Look at St. Ed's, for example. They played like 5 out-of-state games this year against teams from across the country.
Yes, that's what they did, and that's exactly what we just talked about. They're going to take those schools. I'm not sure. I remember they played the Gilman School, which was from Maryland, which is one of the top programs in the nation, and that slotted in as a Division 1 school in Ohio. If they would have been in Ohio, so they got the first level type of Division 1 points, St. Ed's did, and then they got second level points accordingly based on how Gilman did throughout the rest of the season. The one thing about second level points I think that people need to understand is it doesn't matter the size of the school of the second level points. Say you're Conneaut and I'm Grand Valley. You beat me. I'm a Division 5 school. Grand Valley's a Division 5 school. it doesn't matter if I'm Grand Valley and I beat St. Ed's next week. You do not get second level points based on the school, the size that I beat. Your second level points is a percentage of my points. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the size of the school that the team that you beat.
Okay, very good. Are all the schools about the same size? You just went through that one.
Yes.
Okay. It would be good for the school to be able to play for a conference championship. Obviously, that is true. I'm a Fairview graduate. School is less than 25 miles away from Connie and Girard. It's even closer.
And I think that's going to be great. We talked about that a few minutes ago. You talk about natural rivalries. Mm-hmm. These kids are going to know each other. They're going to start building these rivalries where they're going to see each other in 2-3 different sports. Their families are going to start to know each other. And I think you might see a bigger rivalry with these schools than you might have ever seen with Conneaut and Geneva or Conneaut and Grand Valley.
Well, this is nothing new to me either because I'm 61 years old. And I remember playing Girard. Girard is a tremendous basketball school, boys and girls. Fairview's a tremendous football school. That's where Cindy graduated from. So we played those schools before, but now being in the conference will make it even better, I think. And the last one here, I thought this one was pretty interesting. I know Fairview has similar enrollment as Conneaut. Now, you were just talking about enrollment. Difference is Pennsylvania doesn't have open enrollment like Ashtabula County does. You go to school in the district where you live. If you want to go to a different school, you have to pay tuition, and that school district does not have to accept you as a student.
We have that in Ohio too. There's some schools that don't have open enrollment. I know that right now.
We do here in the county, right?
Yes, I believe everybody in the county has open enrollment. But I know that Perry doesn't have open enrollment. West Geauga has it, but this is the last year for it. So that's not going to change anything because there's a lot of schools in Ohio that are playing each other. Like when Perry plays West Geauga, points don't change because West Geauga is going to have no open enrollment, or they currently have open enrollment and Perry doesn't. So that doesn't really change anything. I don't know if maybe in future years Pennsylvania might go to that.
Do you like it? Do you like the county having open enrollment?
Yes and no. I think that sometimes the reason I like it is because it gives different opportunities in different areas. Some schools have different programs, others don't. What I don't really like is when people use an educational backdrop for an athletic advantage. But you also see that in the public parochial dilemma throughout Ohio too, and maybe that's the answer to parochial schools being able to get what they get is having open enrollment, because then everybody's playing by the same playing field. I don't know if that's the answer or not. I for the most part, I like it because at its core, it gives kids the opportunity to go someplace and pursue something they might not have where they would normally go to school. Mm-hmm. And if it's for the best for the kids, then I'll take it.
That's what it's all about, right?
Yes,
Best
yes.
for the kids. Let's move away from this now and talk a little bit about the county, other county schools. Of course, you don't really cover the county schools, but I'm sure you're pretty up on who's doing what and all that kind of stuff.
I still keep track of it.
That's good. I figured you would.
I was at the Star Beacon for so long, and I was at the Gazette for so long. I've got a lot of friends that are teachers and coaches, like Tim Talbacka here, you know. So I'm very interested in it still.
Yeah. Jefferson, the boys basketball team, is an outstanding basketball team. The best in the county. I don't think anybody can deny that.
That'd be a tough argument. You're right.
Now, when you look at a player of the year, right away you would want to look at the Jefferson Falcons, but they're so well balanced, anybody can beat you on any night on that team. Mm-hmm. So when you look at player of the year, now Reggie Bryant of the Lakeside Dragons is having an outstanding year. I think he leads the county in scoring. This Tony Masucci of the St. John Herald seems like he leads his team in scoring every day. Who do you look at right now as a county player? Are you going to look at the Jefferson team? I mean, there's so many great players there. Or are you going to look at the ones that are like Reggie Bryant and Masucci and whoever else is out there? Marcus Ernst of Edgewood comes to mind.
The best part about this question, Chuck, is that I don't cover any of these schools, so I can throw my 2 cents worth in good and not get in trouble for this. Now, I've not seen Lakeside yet. The one thing that I would say that there's two different definitions of a player of the year, most valuable player. Who's the best player on their team? Who's the best player in the county? Or which one makes the biggest impact on their team? I tell you, right now, I think the toughest matchup in the county is Sam Hitchcock. because
Oh.
I mean, he's
Big Andover name. I mean,
Oh,
from the
oh, yeah.
grandfather down.
What are the chances of
Hall of
seeing
Fame
Hitchcock
coach.
at someplace else besides Pymatuning Valley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up with Doug
What a
McGordy and those
basketball
guys.
family
And
that
great
is.
people, just really. I enjoy so much going to a game and sitting next to Bob Hitchcock.
Yeah.
If I sat between my dad and Bob Hitchcock and God rest his soul, Tom Henson, if I sat in that right in the middle of those three guys,
You talk about knowledge.
oh my gosh, I wouldn't even say anything just out of fear of feeling stupid.
Yeah, Sam, he's a great athlete.
And such a tough matchup because he can go inside. He's got that really nifty baseline move where you think that he's pinned underneath the backboard, and he's so long he gets up for the little reverse and uses the basket as another defender, or kind of a pick.
Sure.
I like Sam because he can go out and stretch and play outside and hit the three-pointer too. But what really changed that team, and like I said, they work great together. The entire team does. I agree with you on that. What changed that team, and I don't know what it was, is when Sage Cantini came back from NDCL.
Yeah, that's what Steve was talking about too.
And I grew up with the Cantinis. Rich and I grew up and went to the same church growing up, and that's a long drive from where they lived in Roaming Shores to Notre Dame Cathedral Island. I can see that getting old. So, but yeah, for Sage to come back, I think that changed the team a little bit. Brevin White is so good coming off the bench. He's like the old Vinnie Johnson, the microwave for the Detroit Pistons, where the starters play for like the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game, and then you bring this kid in, and it's like, oh my gosh, he's great. He's just so good in that role, and he's embraced it, and I think that really is good for Jefferson.
They've had 3 consecutive games, Jefferson, where they had 5 two-digit scorers. A coach dreams you have that maybe once in a season. They had 3 and 3 in a row.
How you guard that? The one game I went to, my nephew plays JVs, so I see some of their games. They had 85 points with 4 minutes to go. And of course, I think they ended with 96, but they can hurt you in so many ways. Inside, outside, they've got depth. And Frenchie's a great guy. I'm so happy for him having that success he's having there. And I saw he just got engaged.
Oh,
How
really?
about that? Yeah, he had a good weekend. He beat Edgewood, cut down the net, and he got engaged. That's a good weekend.
And he followed another coach in front of him that was super, and Jeremy Huber.
Jeremy's great. You know what? I think that I love watching Jeremy at the end of a gymnasium because he leans on the wall. He's got the body English like he's still the coach, but he lets Steve do his thing. Jeremy, fantastic. He might be the best coach in the county right now, but he's not even coaching.
Now, if John's going to be truthful with me, and I know he will be, you like to cover wrestling better than basketball, though, don't you?
I do.
I knew it.
I do, which is surprising because many years and many pounds ago, I was a basketball player. We played against Tim Taubach in Harbor. We had some great games, Grand Valley and Asheville Harbor. But yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, it's unlike any other sport I've ever covered because the dedication, with all due respect to every other sport, if you practice 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, you've got 10 hours of preparation time. And if your match on Saturday goes 6 minutes, and it doesn't always, that's your game time. Who practices 10 hours a week for 6 minutes of game time? You have to ration what you eat. Your practices are grueling in a sweat box. You know what? I admire those kids, and that's why I enjoy covering it so much.
I think I remember one of your Facebook quotes or something that in a basketball game there's too many fouls. In wrestling, it's just completely different.
It's a physical sport. Those kids are tough. They beat up on each other. They have to watch their diet through the holidays. How unfun would that be? And
Or any day for me.
Or any day, yeah. I'm a seafood diet. I see it and eat it. But yeah, I really enjoy covering wrestling, and this is a fun time of year because we're really getting into that.
I just went to the tri-meet with Connie at Edgewood and PV, and that was very good. I'm not much to understand the game, or the matches, but I'm getting there. So I'm kind of liking that too. It was exciting.
It is exciting.
It was exciting.
And you guys have a good program up here. You always have.
Yeah, we'll have a few good wrestlers. Yeah, we do. John, let's spend the rest of the time talking about some professional ball.
Sure.
Okay. And how can we not start without Johnny Manziel? Your thoughts?
I think it's time to just go a different direction. If he was, if this was an established team that was winning games and was in the playoffs, you've got some latitude to work on some things. Maybe bring him along, to tutor him, to turn him into what you hope he can be. The Browns don't have that luxury. They are, the Dallas Cowboys, they might have that luxury. They've got an established quarterback. They can bring Johnny Manziel along slowly, or RG3. with the Browns, they need someone who's going to come in here who's going to be a leader. The guy who is leading your team can't be in Vegas or in Dallas and on YouTube videos holding a wad of money to his ear. You can't have that. There's safer ways to go than that, and I think that as soon as they can, it's time to separate and move on.
Do you think he will be back?
I do not.
Okay. David Blatt, what did you think about him getting relieved of his duties?
I was more surprised about the timing than
Not shocked though, right?
No, not really.
I wasn't shocked either.
I covered the Golden State game. I think it was 3 days beforehand.
You did, yeah.
And someone brought up afterwards, and I was right outside the locker room. I'm not doing anything. I wish I was doing something important. I wasn't. I think I was just messing around on Twitter. And it was like at 45 minutes before the game, and here comes Mo Williams, and here comes Shumpert. Guys, there's a game in 45 minutes. And then after the game, someone brought that up. One of the reporters asked Blatt about it. And he said, I got so many things going on. He goes, before the game, you guys know that? He goes, I didn't even notice. And I think that there's some accountability issues with that. And I've heard I'm not up at the Quick Loans Arena all the time to know this, but I've heard other writers talk about locker room problems, some who I respect very greatly. I've known him for a long time, Jason Lloyd, with the Akron Beacon Journal.
Covers the Cavs, yeah.
Covers the Cavaliers. And, he's had his thumb on his pulse for a lot longer than anybody I know has. And, he saw locker room issues. Like I said, the timing is the only thing that surprised me a little bit, because I thought if they were going to make the change, I thought off-season, it wouldn't have surprised me at all then.
One more thing, if I can get it in. How much time I got, Cindy? About another minute. You, big Buckeye fan, I know you go down to Columbus and cover all their games. Tell me about the Michigan State game. We had for the first time, a little controversy with Urban Meyer there after the game about play calling. Is that what you saw?
You should have been in the press box that night, Chuck.
I wish I could have been.
We're all sitting there looking at each other. It's like, this has got to be some sort of a put on.
Yeah.
I have no problem. It was awful that day. I don't know what it looked like on TV, but in person, it was horizontal rain, windy. It was awful there. So I understand not throwing the ball, but if you're going to run a conservative game plan, which I was totally fine with, I think everybody was too, you have to include Ezekiel Elliott. That's like running a wide open offense and sitting Peyton Manning.
And he didn't run that much, did he?
No, he had 15 carries for the game, and 3 of them were in the second half. When the game was really on the line, he only got 3 carries. And that's why I think that Urban really didn't grill Elliott after the game when Elliott said what he said, because the message was right, but that's not the place to say it.
Do you think that cost them the championship?
Oh, sure.
Just that one?
Well, I would say a shot at the championship.
Yeah.
As I think they might have still been the second best team in the nation. I'm not sure that they came together. You look at it, the timing of JT Barrett's driving indiscretion. That hurt, because the previous game was when he was installed as the starting quarterback, and then right after that he gets in trouble. And then he's got to sit down again, and Urban did the right thing then. They needed continuity going into that, and they were still an up-and-down team. They had just found themselves, and JT did something to get in trouble and put the team in peril. I'm not sure they had enough time to get as good enough to beat Alabama at that time. But it's still a pretty darn good team, and I think there's I wrote a column right at the end of the season. That's a great performance in their bowl game, but now every time those guys are going to look at that trophy, they're going to wonder what if, because that was an extraordinary team. I think they're going to be a better team this year, and people give them credit for. But I think there'll be some regret, because that Michigan State game, they let that one slip away.
Well, John, this was a lot of fun, and I got so much more to talk to you about, so I'm going to have to get you back.
Anytime,
Are you willing
man.
to do that?
Anytime. I enjoyed it a lot.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
John Kampf, very
folks.
fine sports writer for the Lake County News Herald, my guest on Around the Town with Chuck, and we'll see you next week.